You're not tired, you're at a breaking point. And that's not the same as ordinary exhaustion. It's not just lack of rest, it's not laziness, and it's not lack of motivation. What's happening is more specific than that. It's as if the way you've always used to function stopped working all at once. Conversations that once flowed now drain you, routines that once felt safe now feel empty. And even simple decisions require a strange, disproportionate effort. What's most confusing is that, on the outside, nothing seems wrong. Your life may even look stable. But inside, something no longer fits. And when someone reaches this point, they almost always do the same thing. They try to force themselves to keep going as before. They push harder. They try to get back into rhythm. And that's exactly what makes everything worse. If you recognize this silent exhaustion, this feeling of functioning, but no longer recognizing yourself in your own rhythm, then this video isn't about motivation. It's about understanding what a breaking point really is, and why trying to go back to who you were may be pushing you beyond your limit. What you're feeling isn't a random collapse, and it isn't lack of strength. In most cases, this happens when the mental strategies you used for years stop working at the same time. For a long time, you managed life through effort, adaptation, tolerance, and self-control. You adjusted, you endured, you functioned. Until you didn't. The breaking point appears when the psychological cost of maintaining that way of functioning becomes too high. It's not that you can't anymore. It's that your system no longer accepts paying that price. Psychologically, this happens when three things come together. First, nervous system exhaustion, not from too much activity, but from too much compensation. You spent too long adapting to what drained you, ignoring internal signals, and sustaining rhythms that were never natural for you. Second, the collapse of automatic responses. What you used to do on autopilot, pleasing, pushing, explaining yourself, forcing yourself, simply stops responding. And third, increased awareness. You begin to perceive the real impact of people, environments, and choices on you. Things that were once normal, now clearly feel draining. This isn't weakness. It's a system that became more sensitive because it became more precise. The problem is that almost no one recognizes this as a psychological process. So people think they're failing, when, in reality, it's the old way of functioning that stopped being viable. When someone reaches a breaking point, almost everyone makes the same mistake, and at first glance, it seems logical. They try to function the way they did before. They force motivation, demand more discipline from themselves. Try to get back into rhythm, as if that were all it takes. They believe that pushing just a little harder will make everything fall back into place. But that extra effort is exactly what keeps the problem alive. Because a breaking point doesn't arise from lack of strength. It appears when the old model of functioning becomes unviable. Forcing productivity, positivity, or performance at this stage is like turning up the volume on a system that's already distorting. It doesn't improve the sound, it only accelerates the damage. Another common mistake is over-explaining what's happening. People get caught in long internal and external justifications. They try to convince others, and themselves, that they can still handle everything. That consumes a massive amount of mental energy that, at this moment, should be preserved. And perhaps the quietest mistake of all is treating this as a problem that needs to be fixed quickly. Searching for urgent answers, making impulsive decisions just to escape the discomfort. But this discomfort is not the enemy. It's a signal that something needs to change in how you operate, not just in the content of your life. The more you try to go back to who you were, the clearer it becomes that that structure no longer fits. And that's exactly where many people exhaust themselves completely. Not because they went too far, but because they kept trying to fit into a form that had already ended. What's happening to you is not an emotional collapse. It's a shift in baseline, the point from which you now function. For a long time, your system operated through effort, adaptation, and tolerance. You endured more than was comfortable, ignored internal signals, compensated wear and tear with willpower. That can work in the short term, but it builds a silent bill in the long run. The breaking point appears when your system learns something very clearly. Continuing this way costs more than changing. At that moment, the brain and nervous system begin reorganizing priorities on their own. You start to perceive more clearly what drains your energy, what demands too much effort, what only works when you diminish yourself a little. This perception isn't rational. It's somatic. The body reacts before the mind. That's why this exhaustion feels different. It's not a lack of physical energy, it's an internal resistance to repeating certain patterns. When this reorganization begins, old strategies lose effectiveness. Pushing, insisting, pleasing, explaining, what used to work no longer responds. Not because you forgot how, but because the system understands it's no longer sustainable. It's like trying to run outdated software on an updated system. It doesn't fail because of an error, it fails because of incompatibility. With increased awareness, autopilot becomes less tolerable, empty conversations drain you faster, environments exhaust you more quickly, emotional demands weigh more heavily. That doesn't mean fragility. It means less anesthesia. The discomfort that arises here is not the discomfort of someone breaking down. It's the discomfort of someone losing the ability to silently violate themselves. And that, even if confusing at first, is a profound change. If you've reached a breaking point, certain signs tend to appear clearly. They aren't abstract, they're behavioral. The first is reduced tolerance. Things you used to endure begin to exhaust you much faster. Repetitive conversations, noisy environments, emotional demands that once went unnoticed. This isn't impatience, it's your system signaling that the cost has become too high. The second sign is a reduced need to explain. Justifying decisions starts to consume too much energy, you respond more briefly, or you simply choose not to enter certain conversations. This isn't coldness, it's psychological economy. The third is disinterest in old goals. Objectives that once moved you now feel empty or mechanical, not because you've given up on growth, but because those goals belong to earlier versions of you. Another important sign is exhaustion after specific interactions. You begin to clearly notice who and what drains you. It isn't everyone, it's patterns. This recognition often comes with a quiet discomfort, as if something inside were saying, I can't keep pretending this doesn't weigh on me. From there, something shifts, you react less impulsively, pause more, observe before responding, and sometimes choose to step away from situations you used to face on autopilot. This isn't avoidance, it's preservation. That's why the feeling of being between phases emerges. You no longer fully recognize yourself in who you were, but you don't yet know exactly who you're becoming. If you identified with these points, what you're calling tiredness is likely an internal limit finally being acknowledged. The most common impulse here is to try to resolve everything quickly, to label it, to make big decisions, to change everything at once just to escape the discomfort. That impulse looks practical, but it's born from anxiety, not clarity. Another trap is forcing yourself to appear normal. Keeping the same pace, responding the same way, meeting old expectations as if nothing had changed. On the outside, it works. On the inside, it comes at a high cost. Also avoid turning this period into an identity. You didn't become someone broken. This isn't a permanent collapse. It's an adjustment in progress. Another frequent mistake is over-explaining, justifying every new boundary, every step back, every shift in posture. Not every boundary needs an argument, and not everyone needs to follow what you're reorganizing right now. And perhaps most importantly, don't treat this discomfort as something that must be eliminated quickly. It isn't a defect, it's a signal. Forcing solutions, numbing sensations, or rushing decisions tends to lead to deeper exhaustion later. The goal right now isn't to return to who you were, nor to become someone entirely different. It's to stop internally violating yourself to sustain a structure that no longer sustains itself. The first thing to do now is not to change your life, it's to reduce friction. Over the next few days, observe where you're spending energy just to keep functioning. Not to grow, not to move forward, just to sustain the basics. Those points are the first ones asking for adjustment. The second action is to reduce unnecessary stimuli. Less explaining, fewer conversations that go nowhere, less exposure to environments or content that leave you more drained than clarified. This silence is not isolation, it's processing space. Third, replace reaction with response. When something bothers you, pause before acting. Not everything requires an immediate answer, not every sensation needs to turn into action. Ask yourself, simply, does this require a decision now, or just awareness? Often, awareness alone already removes half the weight. Fourth, respect your new physical and mental limits. If something starts to exhaust you too quickly, stop before collapse. Not to escape, but to recognize where the real limit is today, not where it used to be. Fifth, do less, but with more presence. This is not a moment to multiply projects or commitments, it's a moment to notice how you function when you're no longer pushing yourself. The clarity you're looking for doesn't come from thinking more. It comes from observing better. These actions don't solve everything, but they create stability. And stability is what allows you to move through this point without turning a necessary adjustment into unnecessary suffering. And even with more stability, it's normal for discomfort to remain. Because what's changing now isn't just what you do, it's how you sustain yourself internally. The discomfort that appears now often feels frightening because it's new. It doesn't hurt like before, it doesn't shout, but it also doesn't pass quickly. And that makes many people think something has broken. In most cases, it hasn't. What changed is the relationship between you and what used to sustain your routine. Habits, rhythms, and expectations that once worked stop offering support, while the new hasn't fully organized yet. This interval is uncomfortable by definition. It isn't a sign of failure, nor a permanent state. It's a transitional period in which the system is still learning what the new point of balance is. That's why forcing well-being now tends to fail. The goal isn't to feel great, it's to stop internally attacking yourself while adjusting. This kind of discomfort decreases as you stop fighting it and begin adjusting your rhythm. It isn't passivity, it's adaptation. With time, what feels strange today begins to stabilize, and what seemed empty gains shape. Not because something external got resolved, but because you stopped demanding from yourself a way of functioning that's no longer sustainable. You are not failing, you are functioning beyond the limits of an old system. The discomfort is not an error, it's the cost of continuing the same way when changing has already become cheaper. Not every collapse calls for force, some call for adjustment. Ignoring that is what truly exhausts you. Maybe nothing needs to be solved right now. Maybe what changed was simply the limit of what you can sustain without losing yourself. You don't need to decide everything today, or act, or explain. Just notice that insisting on the same patterns no longer works, and that from here on, continuing as you are comes with a cost you can finally feel. Silence.